Joe. Guys, please hit the like button so we'll have Joe Theismann, who I'm sure Merrill Reese called a boatload of those Redskin and Eagle games. So wait a minute here. Is this his 8th NFC Championship game? You think he keeps count? My favorite of all the ones that he called, it's got to be the 81 with the Cowboys and the Eagles. It's got to be the 1981 because the Eagles sucked all the way from 60 until 1980. So let's bring Merrill Reese in here and let's get his thoughts on this. Merrill, is this number 8 for you, the NFC title game?
I think, and I will count. I have a media guide here. I think it's 9.
9.
I think it's 8 since 2000, but I think the 9th. I mean, actually, the first was January 11th, 1981.
Yep, that's Cowboys and Eagles, right? Vermillion.
Oh, you bet.
That. You know why I love that game? I love that game because of the environment at the Vet. And I love that the whole thing and that where they had come from. Vermeil, a couple of years removed from being at UCLA. And there was just something about that team. I mean, you got to remember, I grew up a Giants fan because of my uncle. And I'll never forget the Pisarcik play and all that stuff and what have you. And I grew up, Merrill, when I grew up, the rivalry wasn't Giants and Cowboys. It was Giants and Eagles. The Redskins were in there, the Cowboys were in there, but I grew up, man, the Eagles were the rival of the New York Giants.
Yeah, I
thought a lot.
I thought after that, I thought everybody thought that their rivalry was the Cowboys. The Eagles thought their rivalry was Eagles-Cowboys. Giants thought their rivalry was Giants-Cowboys. Washington thought their rivalry was Washington against the Cowboys. They all felt that way because Tex Ram had built that aura of America's team, and everybody was sick of it, and they made Dallas their rival, and that was what happened for many, many years. But still, this was the first time since that game this was the first time since that game, Dan, in 81, where the Eagles are playing a division rival for the NFC Championship.
Wow. I mean, Merrill, does it matter, that kind of stuff? I mean, you know, the Eagles have not been to a Super Bowl if they haven't hosted the NFC title game. Every playoff that they played in the NFC title game that they didn't host, they never went.
Right.
How important do you think that is?
I think it's a factor. I think it's a factor, but they also hosted games. In 2002, the last game ever played at Veterans Stadium, we left the house. My son and I were going to the stadium, and we figured just get rid of Tampa Bay and head for the Super Bowl. And because everybody knew the Tampa Bay, there was some factor that everyone spread around that Tampa Bay cannot win when the temperature is below 40. And unfortunately, Donovan's favorite target that day was Rondé Barber. And that was it for Veterans Stadium. And that was a devastating, difficult to take loss. And then a year later, they lost at the Link, at the Link to Carolina, to the Panthers. And that was another one where Donovan actually got hurt in that game. So they were home. So the home playing at home is an advantage. There's no doubt about that. But it's not a big enough advantage to carry you through if you're not playing well.
A lot of people are saying this is the best roster the Eagles have ever had. Do you agree?
I hate the word ever. I really do. I just hate that word ever because who am I to say what the roster was like in 1948, 1949, when they were world champions and there were 16 teams, I think, in the National Football League, or in 1960 when they won the championship with Chuck Bednarik and Norm Van Brocklin and all of those people. So everything's comparative, right? Because you're comparing them against the rest of the league. So I can't sit here and tell you that. I think this is the best roster in modern Eagles history. Let's say
Super Bowl era, maybe. Super Bowl era.
Yeah. I'd say that. I think so. The most complete. I mean, I said on the air in a commentary, that Eagle, I've seen a lot of great backs here. Wilbur Montgomery and Brian Westbrook. I love Brian Westbrook. And for a couple of years, Ricky Waters was pretty darn good. And Shady McCoy, explosive. Deuce Staley was awfully good for a long time. But there's no doubt in my mind that the best of them all is Saquon Barkley. And as I pointed out, this guy is so good. He's a record setter. He's great in the locker room. He leaves the stadium after a game and helps old ladies across Patterson Avenue. And then he goes home and takes off his cape until the next game.
I made this. Someone asked me this, and I was talking to Brian Westbrook about this. I said, I don't think I can name and say that Barkley's the greatest Eagle running back ever, because I would say this: he's the greatest season I've ever seen a player have. But when you're talking Shady and Westbrook and Montgomery and guys like that, hell, if you even want to put Ricky Waters in there, sure, okay. Keith Byers, who was a dual threat guy. If you want to throw those guys had careers with the Eagles. Mm-hmm. He's had a season with the Eagles. So that's how I kind of separate it. Now, he could be the most talented, like you said, most talented ever. But for a career, I have a hard time putting him in that group because he's only had 1 year in Philly.
But nobody's had a year that compares.
I agree.
Not even close. I mean, he just buried Shady's records. And then you say, well, Shady did it in the snow. Well, so did Saquon. Saquon to say, it's anything you can do, I can do better. It's for Manny, get your gun. But I'll tell you what, he's pretty darn. I haven't seen anybody that is as good as he is. Wow, and I'll bet you, when you talk to Brian, and I love Brian Westbrook, and I consider him a friend. I nicknamed him the Wizard of Westbrook, and he was so great, so shifty, an unbelievable back. But you ask Brian if he thinks Saquon is the best of them all. I'll bet you he tells you yes.
I'll bet you. I'll tell you what he did tell me. He goes, boy, I'll tell you, I'd like to be playing behind that old line when no one touches you for 3 yards. And I'd like to see what I could have done with that group. And I'm going to say it one more time to you here, Merrill. If they close this thing off, that'll be, for a guy like Lane Johnson, that'll be 3 NFC championships in 7 years, 2 Super Bowls. And that pretty much, in my opinion, would validate that offensive line run that you guys have had. I've never seen anything like it. And I think this O-line is even better than that 17 O-line because you had injuries with Jason Peters at the left tackle position. I think he had a guard issue in that. Guys were like sky up. I think the 22 O-line was great, but I think this O-line, I better than 04, potentially better than the 04. I mean, that 80 O-line was damn good too, but this got to be the best O-line I've ever seen the Eagles have.
Once again, when you go back to 80, you're talking about 45 years. 45 years.
Different game.
So we're talking about that offensive line against the defenses of that day. Was Guy Morris was the center. The guards were Woody Peoples and Petey Payrow, and the tackles were Jerry Sizemore and Stan Walters. These are all pros. These are all. So for that time, that offensive line was probably as dominant as this one is for this time.
Absolutely. Okay, I'm going to get to the elephant in the room here. People have brought this up. In the last 2 playoff games, Hurts has averaging right now 92 net passing yards. And people keep bringing up, Sills, you're 16-3. I mean, if you look at it, Jalen hasn't been really asked, except, and I'm saying this to you, Merrill, without him in the run game and on the field, there's not a chance that Barkley goes for $2,000 because of the threat he brings. AJ too, the threat he brings. But even the Eagles, Kellen Moore said it the other day, they're a little disappointed in the passing game. Do you think in these next 2 games you're going to have something in the passing game?
Yeah, I think you will.
The NFC title and a Super Bowl?
I think you will against Washington, and I think you will against either Buffalo or Kansas City. I think you absolutely have to have more in the passing game than you've had. However, there's one thing about Jalen Hurts, and it's been true since high school, Alabama, Oklahoma, and the Eagles, he wins at an incredible rate. Over the past 4 years, the only quarterback who has won more games is Patrick Mahomes. He is a winner. His calm, his sense of calm, his leadership, the things that he does, the way that and Nick alluded to this the other day, the way that he reads a defense and resets the offense and checks out of plays and knows the right thing to call at the right moment. There's a lot that goes beyond the obvious physical things that you see on the screen.
How about this? We were told that Hurts is going to wear a brace on Sunday in the game. And so how much do you think, Merrill, if he's limited mobility-wise, that hurts that offensive attack if he's not able to move offensively running the football? I mean, that takes a dynamic away from him. Look what he did last week. I mean, you go for that 44-yard rush, and then I've never seen that before. Two guys go plus 40 yards with touchdown runs. How much of a factor do you think that is and limits that offense more than maybe in the passing game if he's not able to have mobility?
If that's the case, because I don't know that he can't run. I don't know that his mobility is going to be limited. I know he's practicing today, so I don't know that here on Wednesday. We'll see. But certainly any quarterback who is a mobile quarterback, who is a running quarterback like Jalen Hurts, who during the season, what did he gain? He had 16, let's see. Jalen Hurts during the season rushed for
690.
630 yards, averaged over 4 yards a carry,
right.
and he had he had an amazing season. He really did. He had 14 touchdowns. So that's a factor. That's definitely a factor. He's so good though. But one of the things, there's no doubt about it, when you have an offense that is a +1, it changes everything.
Absolutely. What do you make of Jaden Daniels and what you're breaking down so much with him and what you're seeing and what he has brought to the football team, Washington Commanders? Because, boy, I'll tell you, he just gets better and better and better. I think the job that Brian Johnson has done also has been a factor, and kudos to him. I saw Nick even give him some love about how he's done and helped him grow as a quarterback. But just your thoughts on watching him play, because to me, I think he's had one of the greatest, if not the greatest, rookie season of all time.
Well, I think he has. And Vic Fangio said the other day, forget his chronological age. This is not a rookie. I mean, this is a guy playing like he's been in the league for forever. He's calm. He's creative. He's instinctive. He's a great passer. He's a great runner. He's everything you want in a quarterback. I can't say enough good things about him. That's how great I think he is.
So are you going to be, Merrill, when Josh Harris rolls into the building there, I mean, here's a guy that owns the Sixers and all. How do you think he's going to be received? First, I'll ask you about Josh Harris, the owner of the Sixers. How do you think Eagle fans will, and the reception he will get when he rolls into that building?
Well, first of all, let me just say that I've never met Josh Harris. I've seen his picture. I've seen him on television, but he rarely is even in a press conference. He's kind of he's an owner that you never see or hear from. But look, he did something great for Washington. He replaced Daniel Snyder, who I thought was the worst owner in the history of professional sports. Or right down there. And so he gave them the lift that they needed. And you have to, if you're going to blame him for things, you also have to credit him for being an owner that had the people who made the right moves. He hired the right coach. They drafted the right quarterback. He has elevated that organization immeasurably in one year. He's on 1.5 years, whatever it is. But they've done a great job. But as far as how he's going to be treated by Philadelphia sports fans, well, Philadelphia sports fans, and I would say most of them are not particularly pleased with the 76ers, who I think are 15-27. So they're not about to say, thank you, Josh, for the great job, because right now they're struggling. And this is a town, and all cities all cities are like this, where they have passionate sports fans. It's what have you done lately for us? They're not worried about what he's done for the New Jersey Devils. In fact, I think they don't like the fact that he has a hockey team that competes with the Flyers and now a football team that competes with the Eagles.
I know. How about Zach Ertz? What are you thinking how he'll be received? Because, again, this guy was a staple on that 17 team, one of the more revered players off that football team with the community. I mean, how do you think he'll be received when he comes into that building?
Warmly, because Zach Ertz was a hero. Zach Ertz was a terrific target, great red zone player, the key touchdown in Super Bowl 52. He's a favorite. He's a fan favorite. So Philadelphia usually feels very good about its returning heroes. Now, when Terrell Owens came back with the Cowboys, that was a different story because he left here as a villain, but not Zach Ertz. Zach Ertz is a great guy, and Philadelphia appreciates him, and they will welcome him back warmly until the game starts. Once the game starts, he will not be getting much in the way of accolades.
I said this, couple more here for you, Merrill. I said this about Jalen Carter prior to him being drafted. I usually, and I don't ever, really give a comparison to my former teammate and best friend, Jerome Brown. But boy, man, I mean, you close your eyes and you see it. He's a little bit bigger version. Jerome was about 6'2.5". He's about 6'3.5", 6'4". He's a little bit bigger. He moves well with his feet. His hands are great. Now, Jerome had the luxury of playing next to Reggie. There were a lot of other great players. Clyde Simmons was on that D-line. He had great linebackers. The secondary is filled with headhunters, with Wes and with Andre. So, I mean, he was with a really great group and a great defensive coordinator in Buddy Ryan. But I think Jeff Fisher was on that coaching staff as well. So, I mean, do you see it a little bit there too, Merrill? Do you see a little Jerome in him and how he plays the game?
I see a little Reggie in him too.
Wow.
Really. And Dick Vermeil said that the other day about Reggie. He made that statement that he could turn out. Now, we're talking about his second year, Dan, second year in the league. And
remember something, Merrill, remember something about Reggie. Reggie had the luxury of playing 3 years in the USFL. So when he came in the league, he was 24.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, this is a younger player, Jalen Carter. So, the first 2 years, Reggie had 31 sacks, but he was 24 years old when he came in.
Yeah. Well, that's true. But Jalen Carter, you give him some time. Now, I asked Vic Fangio the other day, I said, you have to watch yourself. He's doing so well. Do you have to sometimes restrain yourself from complimenting him because you don't want him, for all he's achieved, you don't want to give him a big head at this point, making him feel like he's king of the world and anything works. And Vic said, no, I don't worry too much about that because I'm still getting on him because he makes plenty of mistakes. And so he's on him. And with a coordinator like Vic Fangio, he's only going to get better, and the sky is the limit. So I hate to say anybody's the next Reggie or Jerome or anything like that. Let's just say he is an unbelievably talented young player who has the sky as his limit.
Clint Hurt's a dear friend of mine, and he was at the University of Miami, and I know him for about 20 years now. And I asked him, I go, they're coaching him so well. I mean, sometimes, they'll try to run the stretch plays on him. And I said the most important thing to me, for what I'm seeing in growth for Jalen Carter, he's in shape now. Last year, this time, both Jordan Davis and Jalen Carter were not in shape, Merrill, at the end of the year. And you saw them giving up the yards per game. You saw them that day, the run defense was falling apart. That's not been the case this year with them. They've been on top of their queue when it comes to playing.
Jordan Davis is really good. They're good. Yeah. This defense is something. I don't think, although I still think this is going to be a heck of a game. And I'll make one statement, and this is in going with the way these games have gone. Washington is here because they got 5 gifts from Detroit. If you look at the Eagles' last game, the 2 biggest plays were a fumble by Kyron Williams, recovered by the Eagles, and a fumble by Matthew Stafford, recovered by the Eagles. The team that wins the playoff battle will head for New Orleans.
Absolutely true. Merrill, I had a question. The final question for you. It was asked by Zander, and I've always been interested. I mean, I brought up Harry Callis. I was dear friends with Todd, his son, who works with the Tampa Bay Rays. That's how I got to be friends with Harry Callis. Every time they went to Clearwater, Harry would come into my studio, and I'm like, holy, there's Harry Callis. He'd come walking in. I really revered him and Facenda when I was a kid growing up, because in my year, those were like the voices of the National Football League in sports, because they did more than just football too. They did a lot of other things. And Harry obviously was the Phillies guy I don't know if he ever did the Eagles, but I mean.
No, he did football for Westwood.
Oh, he did. That's right, for Westwood 1. Okay. He never did the Eagles though, right?
No.
Never did it. So when you're sitting there for a game like this, do you have preconceived things that you might say, or is this all just at the moment? It's a moment thing because, again, you don't want anything to be generic when it comes to having written something down. The Eagles move on to the Super Bowl. They win the NFC. I mean, you don't put that in your mind or anything like that. Or to you, is it all spontaneous?
It's almost all spontaneous. They did an article on me before Super Bowl 52, and they said, will you write a few lines down for what you might say, because it's going to be for posterity if the Eagles win? And I said, no. I want it to come from my heart. And Angelo, your good friend Angelo, had me on a million times on the morning show, and he would say, I want them to win it for you. And I used to say, and this was not disingenuous, I used to say, Angelo, I've had a lot of thrills. I've called miracles of the Meadowlands, and I could go on with this game and that game and this playoff game. I said, I want them to win it for the fans. These are the people who are out there in all kinds of weather, who take second mortgages to buy season tickets, who spend their last dime on Eagles memorabilia and jerseys for their kids at Christmas. It's for them. I've had so many thrills. It's for them. So when that moment came and Brady threw that last pass, and I was sitting in the end zone. We had the worst seat in the house, 110 yards away from where it was going to land. I'm nervous. Not that they're going to lose, but I'm nervous that I'm going to be known as the announcer who blew the end of the Super Bowl. And as I saw that ball go, suddenly, I don't know how, it was like an NFL film. I saw the whole play in slow motion, and then it came down, and Rodney McLeod tipped it, and I followed it to the ground. And what came out of my mouth was, the pass is incomplete. I looked up at the scoreboard and saw zeros. I said, and the game is over. The Philadelphia Eagles are Super Bowl champions. And the first thing that came to my mind was, Eagles fans everywhere, this is for you. Let the celebration begin. And it was strictly the way I felt at that moment. And I will not. Now, when you say, am I totally spontaneous? No. The one thing I write, word for word for word for word, as I usually write it with about 10 minutes to airtime. About 10 minutes to airtime, I handwrite into a notebook the open to the broadcast, because I don't want to go into the broadcast and hunt and peck. So I may get something in my mind and then say, the sky is December serious, as the Eagles meet and I'll have something, and then I'll tell it to Mike, so that Mike knows when I come to him exactly what my lead is going to be, and Mike Quick can figure out what he wants to say at that moment. Now, the rest of it, the next 2 pages of my book have little notes of things that I might refer to in the course of a game, but I don't use them to just because they're there. I'd say a half to a third of them are just thrown away after the game, but they pertain to that game. And if something happens, I have a note or a topic that I could refer to. And then before a preseason game, I actually write a list of topics that I can bring up in the fourth quarter when the guys in the field are only known to their mothers. So it's my obligation not to create excitement, but to convey excitement. But it's my obligation to keep a broadcast interesting.
Merrill, I'm really happy to hear this because I know then I'm doing it right. I write an open,
Mm-hmm.
and what I do is I write cliff notes.
Yeah.
And I don't do any script or write anything. I just, some things that I'll refer to, but the open for my show is the only thing that I really write. The rest of it, I mean, I
Yeah.
fill 4 hours.
The credits at the end are,
Yeah.
finish the broadcast by saying, for Mike Quick, this is Merrill Reese saying so
Yeah.
long. That, but the rest of it is all from the heart.
Absolutely. I want to say that Angelo was on Monday, and this is what he said. And I know you and I both have a different opinion of Andy Reid. Okay, I like Andy. I like what Andy's done, and I like Andy Reid. Angelo, on the other hand, is not a fan, and he goes like this: I want Kansas City. I want Patrick Mahomes, and I want the Philadelphia Eagles to beat them 45-0 in the Super Bowl. That's what I want, and everyone in Philly can be excited because they beat Andy and they beat Kansas City. Now, I said this. I go, well, I'm going to ask Merrill what he wants, or do you just not care? Buffalo, Kansas City, let's go play 60 minutes. I could care less who's in there.
Andy's going to the Hall of Fame.
Oh,
Could
yes.
he be the winningest coach someday of all time? He could pass Shula's record if he stays in it long enough. He's great. And as a person, I love Andy. Andy's just been wonderful to me, and we continue to text. I also have a very nice, long-lasting relationship. We've golfed together with Sean McDermott, also a wonderful, wonderful Eagles coach. So whoever wins that game, that's fine. I want the Eagles to beat whoever is in it. I want that. But I don't resent anything about Kansas City. I mean, I feel so strongly about Andy. I feel that way about Sean McDermott. I feel that way about John Harbaugh, who is another old golf buddy and friend of mine. These are great guys. These are really great people, and they're wonderful, wonderful, wonderful coaches. So I don't ever root against any of them. I wish them all the best. Only coach who was not my favorite because he just didn't communicate. And I would say hello to him in the hall, and he wouldn't turn his head. And I hate to say it because I'm sure he's not a bad person, but he didn't resonate with me and was not particularly respectful. It wasn't not nasty, but there was no warmth, there was no connection. And that was Chip Kelly, who's sitting there as a national champion today. But he did a great job. He did a great job at Ohio State, and so did Ryan Day, who I know a little bit from his year here.
Didn't McDermott didn't McDermott coach on Andy's staff back in Philly?
Yes.
Wow.
He succeeded Jim Johnson as defensive coordinator when Jim Johnson had to play, and then he was let go. And I don't think Andy wanted to let him go. I think that came from higher up. It might have been from the general manager, but he let him go, and then he was picked up by Ron Rivera, another phenomenal human being in Carolina, and he became the defensive coordinator for Ron for a while, and then he moved on as head coach with the Bills. But I have one of the great things about this job is there's the thrill of broadcasting the games, and there's also the ability to meet some of the most wonderful, talented, bright, warm human beings that you could ever meet. I mean, right now, the guy is Nick Sirianni. Saw him in the hall today. There's a guy who is you'd like him a lot. He gets emotional down that, and he knows that. He's toned down that a little bit, but every player on that team responds to him. He is a motivator, and he is a meticulous guy in preparation. He's a really good young coach, really good, and his record is what is it? It's something. It's like 50 and 22.
I think he's got a win percentage that's up there with Madden right now.
Oh, yeah. Right.
Like
right
730 or 738. I think that was John's
But I want you
record.
to know that he's also a very good guy.
Yeah, Frank Wright, I mean, gave me his phone number, and Frank loves him. Frank loves him. He said that, I mean, he's just an absolutely great guy to be around.
Guys, there's another one of my favorites, Frank Wright. There's nobody classier than Frank Wright.
He was my teammate at Maryland my freshman year before I transferred to Miami.
Really?
Yeah, he was my roommate, and him and Boom. We played on that ACC championship, 1983 ACC title ring for Coach Bobby Ross, and Boomer was on that team, and Frank was the backup on that team, and we've been friends for over 40 years. I mean,
here's your question, Dan.
I didn't realize this, Merrill. When I was covering the Chargers in Los Angeles, when I was down in San Diego, my show went all the way up to LA and all the way up to San Francisco. There, my friend Frank was the OC for Mike McCoy, and the wide receiver coach was Nick Sirianni. I didn't even realize it until he showed me a picture, and I go, holy shit, that's Sirianni. He goes, yeah, he was my wide receiver coach with the Chargers.
Here's your question. You probably know the answer. What distinction does Frank Reich own?
Well, he's got Merrill just took a shot at me, and he don't realize it.
No,
I was on that team that Maryland came back and beat Miami, okay? And he had the biggest comeback, I believe it was Bills and Oilers in that champ. So Merrill just took a shot at me. We were up 31-0 and got beat.
He quarterbacked the biggest college comeback of all time and the biggest NFL quarterback comeback of all time. But you knew it. You know everything.
No, because I was on the field for one of them. And Merrill goes, hey, Sills, he did have a comeback against you. Yeah, Merrill, 31 points. We lost 42-41.
Oh, my. Oh, goodness. That was amazing.
Merrill, have a great call, man. I mean, this is going to be so great. I mean, I love the fact that this is like an old school, old NFC game back in the day, because I got Theismann coming up at 5:30. And this reminds me of just them old school games, Cunningham, Theismann, and those great Joe Gibb Washington teams with those Eagle teams. I mean, I don't know, man. I like the fact that the NFC has two teams in the NFC title game.
I have only one regret, that the game isn't tomorrow. I don't have to wait 4 more days.
Yeah, hey, can't wait to hear the energy on Sunday with you and Mike on WIP. Thank you so much, Merrill.
Thank you, Dan. Have a good day.
You got it. Our good friend Merrill Reese, kind of laying it out there for us, man. That's pretty damn good. Good stuff there. Guys, do me a favor. Please hit the like button. We appreciate you guys so much. Don't forget our great friends at BetUS. During this football time, you just heard Merrill. You got a big-time game coming up on Sunday, the NFC and the AFC championship game, and we've teamed up with our friends at BetUS. That's right. BetUS and JAKIB Sports have teamed up together for the YouTube 150. YouTube 150, 150%. Your sign-up bonus up to $2K. Your second and third are 125%. If you're into crypto, that's 200% in crypto with your signing bonus up to $2K. Go to betus.com.pa. That's betus.com.pa. Home of Michael Vick. Fastest payouts in the business. 24/7 personalized service, 365 days of the year. They've even got a casino that they now have that you can be involved with. Just go to the website. You got live wagering on all major games. betus.com.pa. That's betus.com.pa. And do me a favor, tell them Big Sills sent you.
If you missed any of today's show on the JAKIB Media channel, listen to the podcast on your way home. Available on YouTube, Apple, and Spotify.